With Governor Jerry Brown termed out in 2018, the race is already on to replace him. The crowded field includes two former big city mayors, former San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom and our guest, former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. What are his views on the important issues facing California? A discussion with former LA Mayor and candidate for governor Antonio Villaraigosa.
Additional funding for the Maddy Report made possible by a grant from The Wonderful Company, harvesting health and happiness around the world. Chevron's Coalinga oil field and Fresno County have been doing side by side for over 100 years. Learn more at doers.com. From the California Channel at the State Capitol and the Maddy Institute, it's the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Keppler.
Welcome. Well, the race is on to replace Governor Jerry Brown. One of the current frontrunners is our guest, former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Welcome to the Maddy Report.
Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome to be here. So right out of the box, so why do you want to be governor?
First of all, I knew Ken Maddy. It's an honor to be here. Ken and I were friends. He was a great man, a great bipartisan leader, a man of dignity and grace, so it's great to be with you.
Well, thank you very much. So what's your vision for California?
Well, look, I was born and raised here. Grandpa came here 100 years ago. This is a great state. It's given me more than I could have ever imagined. Former Speaker of the state of California and also Mayor of Los Angeles. But it's a state with the 5th largest economy in the world and the highest effective poverty rate in the United States of America.
That probably surprises a lot of people.
It does surprise a lot of people. I knew that going in because I'd been on a listening tour. I've been to 3 of the top 5 cities with the highest poverty rate. They're in the Central Valley. LA is 14th. San Bernardino is number 9. We have an economy the size of France and a poverty rate akin to Romania.
Yeah, so how do you make that vision a reality? You're trying to change the situation. How do you do it?
Well, I think what we have to do is we're going to have to grow our economy. We're going to have to improve our business climate, particularly for small business. We're going to have to simplify our regulations. But we're also going to have to educate and train our future workforce. We have a graduation rate of about 80% in the state. A good portion of them, only about 13% of the 60% of the kids who are Black and Latino are going to a 4-year college, and only 9% of them are completing it.
Yeah, there's a big shortfall of college graduates, too, in the state.
In the whole state, that's what I'm speaking of. So we've got to educate more of our kids. We've got to train them for the jobs of the 21st century, be 1.5 million down the number of college graduates we need by 2025, and 1 million down the number of people with specialized skills.
Well, the reality is a lot of these programs that you're going to do to correct the situation cost money. How are you going to pay for it?
Well, that's why I started with growing our economy, improving our business climate. We've got to jumpstart this economy in a way that we do have the resources. And then, I was sharing a few minutes ago, we've got to show that we're doing more with the money that we got. We've got to find efficiencies. Los Angeles, I took on our public schools. We had a 44% graduation rate. 1 out of 3 schools were failing. By the time we finished, it was a 72% graduation rate. 1 out of 10 schools were failing. We did that in the middle of a recession when they were actually cutting education. So we've got to drive down costs, find efficiencies in our government so that we have more resources and we can make the case that we got to invest more.
Yeah, it's interesting that it looks like, given the fact that Democrats have a 19% advantage over Republicans, this could end up being a Democratic race between 2 Democrats. So my question to you is, what specific leadership traits distinguishes you from other major candidates?
You just said it, leadership. I got a track record. I'm the author of Healthy Families. 750,000 kids got health care. While I was Speaker of the California State Assembly, we were investing in education. We reduced class sizes. I was someone as mayor who took on a broken economy. We doubled the number of small businesses in Los Angeles from 2010 to 2013. I have a track record. Crime went down, violent crime went down 49% while I was mayor. A 45% drop in homicide.
By the way, PolitiFact says that's a true statement. I checked on that. So
they did say that's a true statement. And also the high school graduation rate going from 44 to 72% was also a true statement.
It was interesting when I was reading up about you. take some interesting positions, and you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is, you support high-speed rail, you support the roads, the $52 billion roads improvement plan, but you're supportive of charter schools, which is a little unusual for a Democratic candidate. You're also supportive of CEQA reform, the environmental law. Interesting positioning.
You know, we're broken into political tribes, if you will, Democrats and Republicans, and oftentimes driven by ideology. I want to be practical. I was a mayor of a city akin to a country. When you look at its size, its diversity, its population, the fact is the next governor can't be an ideologue. You got to be practical. You got to work with Democrats and Republicans. I've said I support charter schools, but I also support traditional public schools. But what I'm looking for are good schools for our kids. I'm not looking for, schools that are failing. And the same is true with CEQA reform. When you look at, this is the toughest state to build anything in. We can have tough environmental standards and simplify and shorten them. And that's what I want to do.
Okay, great. It's almost like a city-state. You were in charge of a city-state in Los Angeles, really.
That's exactly what I was in charge of.
Okay, well,
it's bigger than many states in the nation.
And in some countries. So up next, an in-depth discussion of two of the hottest topics in state politics, providing affordable housing and building an adequate infrastructure, things like roads and water, to serve California's growing economy. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with former LA Mayor and candidate for governor, Antonio Villaraigosa. Let's talk about some current issues the state's dealing with. One of the big issues is affordable housing. And there's a lot of ways you can deal with that issue. One way, you can try to spend your way out of it. So with bonds or tax credits or redevelopment agencies, RDAs. Another way you could approach this is focusing on regulatory reform. Things like amending CEQA, like we just talked about, to kind of free up the private sector to meet demand. What do you think needs to be done?
All of the above.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
I mean, look, it's not just a crisis, it's a disaster. Yeah. People talk about, home ownership as the pillar of the American dream. People can't even rent a home right now. So we got to do both. And the state has got to partner with cities and counties, reward cities and counties that are putting up their own money, bring back redevelopment 2.0.
Talk a little bit about redevelopment for a second. Why do you think that's important?
Well, they took redevelopment away while they were trying to balance their budget. Mm-hmm. They balanced it on the backs of cities and counties. What have we seen is a growing affordability crisis in housing.
Because a lot of that money was used for affordable housing.
Right, and a growing homelessness crisis. So the state has got to partner with cities and counties who have a plan for homelessness, for workforce and affordable housing, for transit-oriented development, and importantly, to shorten and simplify the approval process.
You were talking about that happened back in, if my notes are right, 2011, where Governor Brown kind of cut back on RDAs about $2 billion. Are you looking to see that money reinstated?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Look.
That's a straightforward answer.
Fine.
Great. So let's talk about highways and roads. So those are big infrastructure issues. Obviously, you're dealing in LA with gridlock and all of it. So they've got this new transportation tax, $5.2 billion a year for 10 years, each year for 10 years. Was it necessary?
It's tough on people who are barely making ends meet, who have to travel far to go to and from work. But they hadn't passed a state gas tax since, I think, early 1990s. Right. I think 90 or 92. The fact is, we need that money, but we got to put it in a lockbox. You can't just say you're going to raise that money and then spend it on something else.
That was a lot of people's concerns.
It's got to be in a lockbox. And we can't just keep on raising taxes. So what do we need to do? Innovative financing, like I did in Los Angeles, where we built 3 light rail lines and 1 busway.
And you did that by leveraging local tax dollars.
That's exactly right, with federal dollars and federal bonds that got repaid. But also, on federal loans that got repaid, but also shortening the approval process for these infrastructure projects. I was able to get a shortened approval process for a football stadium. Why not for affordable housing? Why not for building highways and rebuilding our bridges and our roads?
Let me ask you a little bit about mass transit, in the obviously larger urban areas, but also high-speed rail. What are your thoughts on that?
I support high-speed rail, and I do, because it connects the 2 engines of the California economy.
Silicon Valley?
No, the Bay Area and Southern California, with the one place where we have affordable housing and don't have a diversified economy. So I want to use this train for economic development in the valley, for affordable housing, that people who live in those other two areas can live in the valley. We got to drive down engineering costs, and we got to look at public-private partnerships. The state can't do it alone.
Right.
You know, everywhere around the world, the private sector builds, not just either with the government or on their own. They build highways and bridges and roads. We can do that together.
It sounds a lot like
with
the leveraging idea you had in Los Angeles.
That's exactly right, and it was very successful, as you know.
Let's talk about another issue they never talk about, and that's water. Perennially, we're always talking about water. So do you support more dams? What about the governor's $17 billion Delta plan?
You know, like
Where are you
I
on
said,
those issues?
Like I said, I'm a practical person. This is a crisis. I support all of the above. I think we need to recycle dramatically more than we do. We need to conserve dramatically more than we do. We need to clean up our underground aquifers. We need those two dams that we promised in 1998 or 99 when I was Speaker of the Assembly, so Sykes and Temperance. We got to keep our deals if we're going to build the kind of trust you need to do a grand bargain on water. For all of those people who live in the cities and criticize farmers for using too much water, they say they have 20% of the population, they use 80% of the water. This is what I say to them. We eat and drink that water. We eat and drink those vegetables. Let's work together. Let's stop pointing fingers.
I think a lot of farmers would probably
bargain.
agree with you. And the grand bargain's a really interesting idea. But up next, we're going to talk to former LA Mayor and gubernatorial candidate Antonio Villaraigosa, some of the other big perennial issues we're always facing here, things like crime, poverty, jobs, and education. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, who's running for California governor in 2018. Let's talk about an issue that's perennially on people's minds. Maybe it's the utmost thing when they think about government, and that is public safety. So while crime statistics are generally down, there's been a recent uptick in some crime statistics. Is this a one-off anomaly, or is this something more of a trend?
Well, we got to track it and look at it and use data to determine. Well, I was mayor, as you well know, 49% drop in violent crime, a 45% drop in homicides, a 55% drop in gang crime. But also, we grew the police department by 1,000 officers in the middle of a recession, but we also had the most innovative anti-gang prevention intervention programs in the nation. So,
let me ask you a question. What do you say to people that say, you know, no, the economy was just getting better, or was 3 strikes was the reason why, tough on crime, that's the reason why crime went down? How would you respond to that? It's
just not true.
Okay.
3 strikes was in effect all through the 90s, all through most of the first part of the 2000s. My mayoralty was 2005 to 2013. The fact of the matter is we grew our police department by 1,000 officers because we were the most underpoliced big city in the United States of America. We were the gang capital of the United States. We were tough on crime, but smart on crime. Just like all of these issues, and why it's hard to answer in a minute, is you got to have an approach of all of the above.
Comprehensive, yeah. It's interesting. The research shows that putting more police on the streets does have it's a good return on investment. In those arguments,
lot bigger, better return on investment than prisons.
Exactly. But there's a lot of dispute about, you know, why is that? Why are they trying crime trends down? Though they do give you a lot of credit for doing that. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about poverty, which is somewhat related. Obviously a big issue in inland California. You've also got this kind of silver tsunami, I think you've referred to, the aging baby boomers. And you think about poverty rates for them, a lot of them don't have savings. So the state's been talking about something called secure choice, an idea to create a state-administered pension plan for private employees. Where are you on that issue?
Well, as I said a few minutes ago in Spanish, look, it's a great idea, but I think we got to make sure that the state isn't left holding the bag. I've said, you know, I believe in defined benefits, not defined contributions.
And just for our audience, a defined benefit plan is a typical pension plan. Defined contributions like a 401k where you invest.
That's exactly right. But as we know, they have to be sustainable. We have to be able to make sure that we can pay them now and for the next generation. And I think we'll have to look at the same with this proposal. I don't know the details of it. I know that we can't put the state on the hook.
Well, the reality is, if these people go into poverty, you're going to be paying, you know, social services for these folks. You're going to pay. The other interesting point is, you know, Fresno is one of the few cities in the United States that has a defined benefit plan for their police officers, for example. That's completely solid. It's completely funded. So there is a way to do that if it's done.
That's exactly right. Done intelligently, working with our unions and making sure that the next generation gets the same pension.
I know this is a big issue for you. I want to ask you
something
about
close to
this.
it.
You know, this two-tier economy that exists in California, where you have unemployment rates in the Valley that are twice as high as what you see in the Bay Area. And you were talking about some of the, the rates of poverty in some of the cities. The unemployment level is very high. Reading somewhere that 8 of 10 metro areas with the worst unemployment nationally are in California. So what do we need to do to correct that
And
imbalance?
3 of the top 5 are
right in the Valley.
The Valley.
Right, and so how do we correct that imbalance between the coast and the inland areas?
Well, one of the things I've said, one of the reasons why we have the highest effective poverty rate is the cost of housing. That's why I have a housing plan that will put a housing trust fund that leverages cities and counties who put up their own money, bring back redevelopment. Also, enterprise zones. We eliminated enterprise zones in the middle of a recession. Enterprise zones are opportunities to identify high poverty, high unemployment areas and provide tax credits to bring more businesses and diversify those economies. So I want to focus like a laser beam on places like the Central Valley. That's why I've spent so much time here on my listening tour and while I'm campaigning.
I will say that you have definitely spent a lot of time in the Valley. It's been a focus of your campaign. Inland California, both San Bernardino
That's exactly
area
right.
and the Valley. So
I'm going to the places that this state is left behind, and I say, I'm your candidate. And I'm your candidate because my whole life I've stood up for an economy and a society where we're growing together.
We've only got about a minute or so left in the next segment, this segment, but I want to ask you this question because I know it's really important to you, and that's education. Trying to help people that, whether it's Latino students that make up more than half of California schools or 1.4 million English learners, how do we help them be prepared for
all of our kids? Only 80% of our kids are graduating from our public schools. And we've got to make sure that all of them get the education we need. But particularly the kids who are increasingly the majority who are even further behind. They're graduating at 70%. As I said, only 13% of them are going to a 4-year college, and only 9% of them are actually, of the 13% are actually completing it. So what do we need to do? We need to show that we're doing more with the money we got. We need to extend the school day where we can. After school programs, make investments in our schools that bring back career technical education and others.
And I know that's been a big issue for you. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more with former LA Mayor and California gubernatorial candidate Antonio Villaraigosa in a second. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with California gubernatorial candidate and former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa about some of the big issues confronting California if or when he becomes California's next governor. So I want to talk to you about immigration. I know you wanted to say something, though, about early childhood education.
We're trying to finish that period real quick. We need to focus on early child education, universal preschool, full-day kindergarten. These kids are coming in too far behind, and it's a big reason why they're not making it at the end of the rainbow. So we've got to make those investments early on, and that investment is a greater bang for the buck than even college.
Yeah, the research shows, like we were talking, by 3rd grade, you know if someone's going to be successful, but then there's the cost. So there's always that balance, cost-benefit. Let me jump into immigration. I know we're covering a lot of issues. How do you feel about sanctuary state, sanctuary cities idea?
Well, the notion started in Los Angeles under Daryl Gates, police chief, a very conservative police chief, who realized that there were many immigrants in Los Angeles who were not trusting the police, not coming forward as victims or as witnesses. And so they said that our police force job is to protect the public safety, not to enforce our immigration laws. That's where it started. And now it's gone across the nation.
Because people go back into the shadows. They're worried that they're going to be
That's
deported.
exactly right. What we need to do is fix our broken immigration system. It's broken. Let's give people a pathway to citizenship. They have to get at the end of the line. They can't have committed serious crimes. But, they're contributing. They're living here. Let's fix this broken immigration system, not focus on things that really don't make any sense. What people don't realize, as an example, LA's the epicenter of the foreign-born, 44% foreign-born. The largest undocumented population of any city in the nation. Also, our economy's growing. Cities getting safer. The fact of the matter is, we've done well with immigration in this city, and Fresno as well, and you wouldn't have an agricultural industry if you didn't have
I think most
these
farmers
people working it.
would agree with you on that. Let me switch gears again and talk about health care, another really big issue. There's the issue about uneven access to health care. What is your prescription for what ails California's health care system?
Well, we got to protect the 3 to 5 million people who could lose their health care as a result of the proposals we see in the Congress and with the current administration in the White House. So I've said we've got to find cost containment, we've got to focus on prevention, we've got to look at what we can do to drive down drug costs.
Are you for single payer?
I'm not. And not because I'm not philosophically for the government paying for that care. There's a $400 billion price tag. You said earlier that I'm not a guy that just, goes to the extremes. It's not that I don't believe that we should do like many countries, have government paid for health care. It's that we need a plan for it and we need the money for it. And so what I want to do is protect the people currently who have health care as a result of the ACA, make sure that we drive down costs, that we identify places, public option is a possibility where people can buy into Medi-Cal. Look at all of the things that we need to do to make sure that we're protecting the people who have health care.
The current speaker, Anthony Rendon, had the same feeling frankly, about single payer because it's a $400 billion price tag with no way to pay for it. So that was the issue there, so kind of similar.
I'm the author of Healthy Families. 750,000 kids got health care. I did that after proposing to expand Medi-Cal to 200% above poverty in 95 and 96. In 97, I passed it with Pete Wilson. It was a compromise, but 750,000 people got health care.
Let me transition to another topic. Climate change. 97% of all climate scientists, according to NASA, say that climate warming trends are due to human activities. But studies also show that California only produces about 1% of global emissions. So how do you balance the issue of climate change with economic development in California?
Well, first of all, economic development. We're leading the nation in terms of our environmental standards, and we've created more green jobs, 500,000 during that time. I want to focus a lot more on creating green jobs, on creating jobs that pay people a middle class, wage. I also want to address the issue of pollution because there's a lot of focus on carbon emissions and not enough focus on pollution. While I was mayor, we reduced our carbon emissions by 28%. Number 1 American city, number 5 in the world. We also became a clean tech capital of the world, green jobs, not of the world, of the United States. And we cleaned up our port, a 90% reduction in truck emissions. So
that's a big source of pollution, the ports.
We got to do, yes, it is, and we got to do both.
Yeah, it's interesting, 40 years ago, my brother lived in Los Angeles and you couldn't see anything. And now it's much better than it was, 30, 40 years ago.
But I want to say one last thing.
Sure.
There are a lot of people who work hard in the Valley, particularly in Bakersfield, who work in the oil industry. We can't just put them all out of business. This notion that we're going to put these people out of business without retraining people, without creating other parts of the economy that are growing doesn't make any sense.
But the way you see it is actually a green economy is a way to create more jobs and higher paying jobs.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I want to thank former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa for joining us. He's running for governor of the state of California in 2018. If you want to stay up with state and local politics, you can sign up for the Maddy Daily on our webpage at maddyinstitute.org. This is Mark Keppler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the California Channel or the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions expressed on the Maddy Report, visit our website at maddyinstitute.org.